Is the Epic Games Store secretly evil?
Well, a lot of people seem to think so.
But are they right?
Hot take! A lot of murmurings about Epic Games these days. Borderlands 3 was announced like less than 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
And then there were rumors that Borderlands 3 might only be coming to the Epic Games Store, be timed exclusive to that platform. Shortly after, 2K they said, hey, yes, Borderlands 3 will be exclusive to the Epic Games Store for 1 year, and then it'll go to Steam and stuff. Shortly thereafter, once that was confirmed, a lot of people started review bombing the other Borderlands titles, other Gearbox titles on
Which
Steam.
you would do when you're really upset.
Because you want your voice to be heard, right? And then that allowed Steam, for the first time, to use they have an off-topic review activity flag. So they're like, okay, well, this doesn't add up. So they use that. So, okay, there's so much going on, so much turmoil and so much screaming with Epic Games being at the forefront of it. Why is everyone so angry? What's going on, Shane?
Well, there's a number of things going on, Adam, but let's just talk about the most basic functionality of all this. First off, there is a brand new video game store for digital distribution on PC, on the internets, and it is called the Epic Games Store. It's produced by the folks at Epic Games. And the concept is that they have a digital storefront that is very much like Steam, but missing a heck of a lot of features, which we'll dive more into a little bit later.
Yeah, we got some stuff to talk about there.
Yeah, but what's going on is typically what you see with digital storefronts, usually from developers, let's just say from Ubisoft or EA, or even the folks at GOG.com being owned by CD Projekt Red. Those storefronts exist where they distribute their own unique games that they make, but then they distribute a lot of other games that are available on a variety of other platforms. But Epic came in acting like the big boys, running around and taking out a whole bunch of exclusives on a whole bunch of different platforms and making them exist only on the Epic Games Store.
Yeah, that's right. We saw some titles like Metro Exodus was brought over to the Epic Games Store, and there was a lot of weirdness there because for the longest time, Metro Exodus was being advertised on Steam, that people could pre-purchase the title there, and then it was found out that it was going to be a timed exclusive on the Epic Games Store platform. And then there's a lot of people were shouting and stuff, and Deep Silver, the publishers, finally allowed these Steam pre-purchases to be honored. So the people that did pre-purchase that title got to play or got their hands on Metro Exodus. But beyond that, yes, it's exclusive to the Epic Games Store platform for a year.
But the problem was with that one little situation was that it showed everyone that Epic was kind of going in a way that most people weren't expecting. Now, initially, including myself, I was excited for the concept of a brand new digital storefront because the idea is to have a lot more storefronts out there, breeds competition in the workplace.
And that's good.
And that's a good thing, right? We want more stores out there because basically you have to fight over prices. But Epic is playing dirty. They're throwing sand in all the consumers' eyes and going, you want this? You only get it here.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. When Metro Exodus was originally announced on Steam, everyone was excited because it was coming to a platform in general. And a lot of advertising happened from that. So a lot of people that are interested in that game saw advertising or got notified of the game existing on Steam. Then when it got pulled off and came to another storefront, it felt really dirty because like a lot of people were going, okay, I can't buy it on this store. Now I have to go to some other place when I had no intention of doing that. And because it's only available right now on one storefront, that means there is no competition between the other stores. There's no price matching, no nothing like that. So consumers are basically forced to buy it on one thing rather than getting it on other ones.
So in some other media, some exclusivity might not be such a big deal, but it seems like nowadays the turnover rate for video games is so quick. Everything is like a flash in the pan that even if you have like a timed exclusivity with a specific title, like a title that everyone wants for a couple of months, I mean, that could be a really, really big deal. We're seeing other titles that are being pulled over to the Epic Games Store, like The Outer Worlds, which we're both very excited about.
Not so much anymore.
Remedy Games Control, I guess, has some sort of exclusivity there as well.
Apparently.
It seems like the more there is kind of a history of titles in a series, or the bigger the developer is, the more that people get a little bit angry about the exclusivity with the Epic Games Store. Because we see some indie games, some games that are a little bit smaller that had exclusivity even when Epic Games first announced their storefront, and we're like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like Hades, remember Hades and Ashen, I believe, as well.
Because we didn't know those games existed beforehand.
There's no legacy there besides maybe a little bit of the developer's legacy.
Sure.
But yeah.
So Here's why it's a bad thing, in my opinion. Now, I am pro-consumer. I am avidly pro-consumer. I'm always going to be pro-consumer because I'm a consumer. I buy the majority of the games I play, as many people out there do. If you like a video game, you go out and you buy it. You don't just choose which platform. You usually just get a game on a platform because you like that game, not because you like the platform. Here's what my issue has been lately. When I want to go buy a game on PC, I have a variety of different storefronts I can be buying the game on. Now, the reason I like buying games on Steam is because I have a big, long-going trust with Steam. I've been a part of the Steam ecosystem for years and years and years. I trust Steam in multiple ways with my personal information, my financial information when I want to buy a game. I trust their security because they've got really good security features to keep the account safe. And then on top of that, if I buy a game and there's something really wrong with it, they have an incredibly good return policy, which you typically don't see on digital storefronts. And the only problem I've ever had with Steam is that they're not DRM free.
Right.
But I got another storefront for that, and that's GOG.com. GOG.com is the other, or the GOG Galaxy as well. That is the other digital storefront I use a lot because I like to have these two storefronts. If I want something DRM-free where I can take that file, save it on my hard drive for years to come, I can trust that these two storefronts are going to be around for a really long time. Origin is going to be around for as long as EA is around doing stuff. Uplay's the same kind of idea. They make their own games. It makes sense for them to have their own storefronts and stuff like that. EA with their, Epic with their storefront, I assumed was going to be the exact same thing. Epic has a lot of games, and I just assumed we were going to go in that same direction, but that didn't happen. You do have Fortnite, and you have the new bad version of Unreal Tournament that they really didn't finish, but not a lot of people are playing, and there's a lot of there's a lot of things wrong with it. Those are the only two Epic games that you have on there that you can download for free, and then there's a third one, and that third one is that's
the Metroidvania.
Yeah, I forget the name of it.
Oh my gosh, this is gonna kill me. Shadow Complex.
Shadow Complex.
Thank you.
Shadow Complex is available on their storefront as well. So technically, at this point, you only have 3 Epic games that you can buy on the Epic Games Store.
That is bizarre to me, man.
Yeah.
That is so bizarre.
I have more Epic games on Steam than I do on their own storefront, which is just wild. Like, I don't even understand why that's a thing, but that's how that plays out. What they've been doing is they've been going around buying all these exclusivities for all these games and forcing them to be on one platform. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there going, well, there's nothing wrong with that, but there is. The moment you can only go to one store to buy these games, it means that the prices on these games can be adjusted in a way that it seems unfair because you can't buy the game in any other storefront and they have to kind of fix things around. Now, one of the big deals with developers is that Steam takes a larger cut than the Epic Games or the Epic Games Store.
Yeah, that's right. So Steam takes 30%, which is pretty well the bar for gaming in general.
Yeah.
So on PC, Steam 30%. Think about your PlayStation, your Switch, or your Microsoft Xbox. It's 30%. So it's not like it's unusual that Steam's 30%. Where things really started to change was when the Epic Games Store said, "Oh no, wait, we'll give developers 88% of the revenue from game sales, and we'll only take 12."
Yes.
So okay, in my mind, it seems like you're talking about your great experience with GOG and your cool experiences with Steam and how like they kind of usher in users based on the playground that they set up for you, the different ways that you can kind of interact with the service. It seems like, to kind of simplify things, the Epic Games Store is using exclusivity, and the only folks that really seem to be benefiting from this are like the developers and the publishers. It's less we want an experience that drives the user there because the user like just loves that landscape, right? Not just because, oh, I can only play it there and the cost might be whatever absorbent amount.
It's important that developers make money from their games.
Yeah, absolutely.
No one is arguing that,
yes.
okay?
Yeah.
It's super important. It's a very important thing for stuff like that to happen. My problem, though, isn't with the idea that developers are making more money. My problem with this is that the games seem to cost the same amount on their platform that they would have on other platforms.
That's right. Yeah, I was looking into this before. So I was looking at some titles, like I just looked up a few, like Slime Rancher is the same on the Steam store, and Darksiders, the new Darksiders 3 is the same. Anno 1800 is the same. It's like, well, when we first heard about this, everyone was talking about the competitive nature of many storefronts. storefronts, it doesn't seem like it's competing as much as it's making an exclusive club for specific titles.
And why? And okay, and those games that we just talked about, the ones that are made by Ubisoft, I think Watch Dogs 2 is available on there and all that stuff.
Yeah, the Division, I think it has some weird exclusivity as well.
It doesn't make sense when Uplay exists, where they make 100% of the profit. They own Uplay. So at the Epic Games Store, having that cut off the top there means that you can bring the cost down of the games because you've budgeted to make this amount of money. Now, what's going on is not only are they getting the exclusivity, but Epic is actually paying these developers more. But consumers aren't getting anything from this. We're not getting a better storefront. We're not getting better or pro-consumer features. For instance, that thing I talked about, the ability to return a game because there's something wrong with it, we're not getting that.
Yes.
We simply aren't. Right now, there's this idea that Epic has this return policy, but it doesn't seem to be working the way that everyone was believed that was supposed to work.
I remember hearing about it a long time ago where you had to provide a lot of proof, and some of that proof seemed like pretty harsh, I guess. So the Epic Game Store, not only are the return policies silly, but I know, yes, the store is new, and there are some services that are not available to the users, but like I was talking about Playgrounds earlier, there's not that much in this playground. Like Steam offers a lot of community-based things like forums. There's things like Big Picture mode. If you hate the trading card thing, whatever, it's a cool little thing that's there. There's a heck of a lot in Steam that promotes a great atmosphere for players to connect and to do cool things with games. And I guess I just hoped that even though the Epic Game Store would be a new thing, that there would be more at launch, or more would be doled out very quickly over the months.
It's seemingly not going that way.
There's still no achievements. We have it all written down. No achievements, no cloud saves, bare bones user interaction, no mod support. There's no shopping cart?
No, there's
no shopping cart.
No shopping cart. But that's because they don't have that many games on the storefront to begin with.
That's true.
Now, look, one of the things we've been told constantly, and I've heard many interviews where they've stated that the Epic Game Store is all about high quality games. They're looking for good games and not the slop that you see on a lot of other digital storefronts. Now, of course, what they mean by that is a lot of the shovelware that you see on Steam. Valve tries to do the best they can by not moderating what games appear on their platform, because you never know what's going to be a success. You really don't. Most people once upon a time thought that Fortnite was going to be a runaway success from the ground up, and when it came out, nobody played it. It's when Epic took the concept of another game and strapped it onto that game that people started to play it. You can never know what's going to be a success and what's not. And quality of a game is very much subjective. But what isn't subjective is when a game performs properly. And what we've seen on the Epic Games Store right now is there's a couple of questionable games on there. Hello Neighbor Hide and Seek. Bad game. Look, I know there's going to be a couple people out there that go, I enjoyed playing it. And that's great. You're wrong. But see, the game is actually bad. It is functionally bad. It was rushed. I've actually seen developers rail against that game because of what they did with the game and how they kind of spun something around really quick and made something that is just unfunctional. And I've sat there, I've tried to play the game. I'm not even a big fan of the first one, but I would heavily recommend the first one over the second one, and I don't even recommend people play the first one. There's a lot going on there. And we must have to assume that Epic put that game on the storefront because they just assumed it was going to make a lot of money, and I don't know if it did.
Yeah, it seems like their curation, where they're saying they're curating games that are like good games to play. The curation is more dependent upon how many people are going to buy this.
Yes.
Really, because Hello Neighbor, the original, even though it was very, very janky, there are a lot of problems there. It was a runaway success because of like Twitch streams and things like that. You know, that had almost a mild Five Nights at Freddy's effect, right? So they just assumed a lot of people are going to be buying this game on their service, and yeah, very much so. And it seems like whenever there is a title that has a lot of people talking, oh, Borderlands 3 is going to be coming out, like whatever a lot of people are talking about, I'm sure Epic Games is going to try to snap it up. They have that Fortnite money right now, which we can discuss a little bit about that Fortnite money.
It's probably not going to be around forever.
Yeah. So right now, there's a lot of money to be tossed around, and again, that may be why things are seeming a little more aggressive with the titles that they're buying up, because maybe the writing on the wall now is becoming more and more legible as time goes on, and Apex Legends and the Fortnite further is declining a bit. Like maybe they're like, okay, no, throw everything at the wall right now as far as purchasing up exclusive games. We got to get people in our store now because who knows what's going to happen in a year.
Yeah, because the sun's fading, basically.
What?
Now, there are some ideas out there that many of the things that they're working on to be consumer pro things, like the ability to return, user reviews, and that kind of stuff. These are very important because if we go to a storefront, we can warn other people about the games. Steam has so many features like
curation sections.
Curations from people you know and trust.
Oh, absolutely.
Like folks like us.
We can make a curation page. You can go to our page, and if you trust the personality or the person, you can say like, oh, I like their games. I like the games that they like. They like this game.
Yeah.
Maybe
we don't have one, but if we did, that could be a thing that could happen, right? Yeah. There's that idea there in play where there's a whole bunch of people that you could trust doing that kind of stuff. And right now, Epic doesn't have that. But there is the also additional problem that maybe Epic does things that are not really good for developers either. Now, like I mentioned earlier with Fortnite, when Fortnite originally came out, the game was very different. But what they did was they saw something another developer was doing, and that was the folks at Blue Point Games making Battlegrounds. PUBG.
Yeah.
PUBG. Not Blue Point. Maybe Blue Point? Is it Blue Point?
I'm not too sure.
Jeez,
we'll just say
the
PUBG.
name. We'll just say PUBG for now. What happened with PUBG, though, is when they released that game, they had a runaway success. A whole bunch of people were buying it. And Epic worked against them by having dealt with them in the past to some degree. They were having issues with the engine. They were speaking to them. Right. And then what happened was they lifted the entire concept of the game and replicated it one-to-one. There's a lot of debate on there about how Epic really didn't steal anything. It was a pre-existing concept. But no, they stole it. I mean, look, you can argue about that up and down.
Right.
They stole the game philosophy and concept.
I think the legality of it is fine, but
it's fine but only because the companies. There's one large company that happens to own these two smaller companies.
Yeah, there's a difference between the legality being fine and whether or not it was a quote unquote like bad move on their part. You know what I mean?
So once that had happened, okay, we just assumed that they really wouldn't need to do that again, but now they're stealing features from Apex Legends and Fortnite with the respawn vans and stuff like that. So we're starting to see this stuff happen, which looks not only anti-consumer, but now it's anti-developer. So Epic isn't really doing things that feel good for really anyone around here, because if you really look at this starts to get into a very messy field where it seems like they're rushing to do things without having any groundwork in place. However, they do have a groundwork in place because they showed off the roadmap for their product.
Right, you can find the roadmap for what's happening in the future. And it isn't terribly exciting, and it seems like things are being doled out not nearly as quick as we'd like to see them. We can go through a few of them. I mean, near term, they have between 1 and 3 months, things like cloud saves, which in today's day and age, like cloud saves have to be kind of a forefront in any service as far as I'm concerned.
It's weird to see some of these features like so the user reviews, the shopping carts, the concept of news feeds and price adjustments.
A lot of like players interacting with one another, like those sort of things. It'll take time to implement into the system.
We take these things for granted, but like these are actual issues because without these features. You have to understand, we're looking at like 6 months projections, maybe a year projection for some features, and some features they're not even being announced yet because they don't know when they're going to be finished. And here's a problem:
the Storefront is an early access game. The Storefront is a Steam greenlight project.
So one of the big issues with having this problem is that when you really think about it, it feels like they don't have maybe enough money coming in to warrant working on these features. Now remember, we were talking about the 30% cut early on.
Yes.
Those 30% cuts are not just, like, I know it sounds like such a big take from the game, but it costs a lot of money to keep Steam running. It costs a lot of money to keep any of those digital storefronts running. So the moment you remove a huge percentage of that, then suddenly the actual storefront isn't holding all those things. So is this Epic Game Store going to stay live forever, or is it eventually going to shut down?
Well, that's one question I wanted to ask you when it came to percentages. Do you feel like Steam will make a little shift in their cut at all? Or do you think they see what's happening with the Epic storefront and maybe they think that things might fade out over there? In other words, do you think they'll maintain 30%, or do you think they're going to dip closer to what the Epic Games Store is doing.
I would only expect to see a dip in the income, which I don't expect to happen, but I'd only think that could happen if Valve was willing to state that we can keep the same quality or improve the quality with less income. I don't think that they're capable of doing that, nor do I think they should do that, because it doesn't make sense. At the cost of losing the return policy, at the cost, like the moment you've returned a game, they've lost all income from you, right? Like that's a big deal.
And it's super quick to do so on Steam.
Yeah, I mean, these features are just kind of, like they're just there,
Well,
and I like the fact that they're there.
What do you think about the opposite perspective? Do you think that the Epic Games Store might increase? Like, after all the positive press they got for going for like 12%, do you think they'd, or like, okay, do you think that they would increase the amount of revenue that they take for game sales, or do you think that they can somehow like change what we've been talking about this whole time, change what their storefront is in quick enough time so that they can turn things around and create a positive atmosphere both for developers and for gamers alike?
It's hard because
it's very complicated.
See, the moment they said that they were going to self-curate, they're only going to put games up there that they like, right? So then that's really mean to certain developers out there that are trying to get that first cut. There are games out there that I have played that they were very small, minor experiences. They weren't really fantastically big, but that one gem of an idea grew and became something bigger. And from that, a company emerged that started making bigger and better games. For Epic to be the company to go, well, we know what's good and bad. Well, you don't. You make a lot of bad games. Like, I don't know if anybody realizes this, but Epic makes the engine that is the background for many of these games.
Yeah.
But there were games, I think Paragon was just a game that they made and then disappeared because they couldn't make it work.
Yeah, it was a
Fortnite at the very beginning crashed and they had to steal someone else's concept.
Yep.
There are games that Epic makes themselves that aren't very good. On the whole, they make a lot of good games.
Shadow Complex is darn good.
Yeah, it is, right? This is the thing, though.
Yeah.
You can't be the end-all, be-all for all of these games, right? Like, what if in the future, if they have this all-powerful store, they go, you have to use our engine to be on our storefront.
Yeah.
See, this is the thing with Steam. Steam never had exclusivity for any game. That just didn't happen. Everyone was capable of releasing their games on every other platform. It's just there wasn't many other platforms.
Right.
Valve has never been a vindictive company to go, look, Half-Life 2 exists only on our platform and no other platform. No, it was available on other consoles as well. In fact, it was to the point that if you played Portal 2 on PlayStation 3, you could log into Steam and play with people co-op.
That's the way I played it.
Yeah, there was really crazy things that they were doing back then, and they were trying to really expand. With their own games, it makes sense for them to keep them on their own digital storefront, but I never saw them go be vindictive. In fact, as funny as this is, the very first company on Steam to be releasing games that wasn't Valve was Epic. The Unreal Tournament 3 was the very first game I bought on that platform that wasn't made by Steam. It was a big deal, and I was like, this is going to be groundbreaking. Other companies can now release stuff on here. And then I remember the library getting bigger and bigger into where it is now. Valve, with Steam, earned where they are now. They put themselves in that place, and look, they're big, and they can have issues, and they can have problems, and as we've seen, they're willing to fix those things. They're doing everything in their power to make those things work, and having competition for that stuff is good. But what Epic is doing isn't trying to be competition for the sake of bettering the medium or bettering digital distribution. They're just doing it to just be kind of jerks, and I don't understand why they're doing that.
Yeah, there's something. Now that you mention it, there's something very ironic about Epic Games making their own storefront, and then Gearbox, of all companies, going to the Epic Games storefront. Gearbox, of course, started off making the Half-Life expansions.
Yeah.
For Valve games.
Gearbox,
right?
Gearbox is like, okay,
it's pretty crazy.
Just understand where I'm coming from this. Valve had everything to lose because with Half-Life 2, they were making their own engine that they were, the source engine, that they were actually selling out to people to make their own games. And by allowing Epic to release Unreal Tournament on their platform, that was inviting competition for their own engines. That was a big thing for them to do, but they were okay with it. When Gearbox is around, at the very beginning, they were making those games, and Gearbox simply wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Valve and for Steam. So to see this company do these things, to see them to just turn their backs on Steam,
I know.
it's not just turning their backs against Steam. It's turning their backs on all the consumers that supported them on that platform.
True. Especially with a series like Borderlands, because the first 2 games were very, very much played on the Steam storefront. You know, they're on consoles as well, but even though they're not directly advertising Borderlands 3 on Steam like they did for the Metro game, in a way that legacy was there. So that's like, it's very understanding why people are so very upset. We have a correction very quickly before we wrap things up. Blue Hole Games did PUBG. Our editor has gotten us the news. Anyway.
That's why I saw Blue Point, because it was right there. Yeah. But here's something else to keep in mind too, okay? So when you're thinking about all these games, you're thinking about all these scenarios, just imagine this. If Epic does enough bad things to tempt the giant that is Valve, I still don't believe Valve would ever do this. But all Valve has to do is go, if you want to release a game on Steam, exclusive for a year. And then what happens to Epic? They don't survive that, right? I don't think Valve will ever do that, but like that's the mentality that Epic is having right now towards Valve for no other reason than the fact that they can. I think that Epic is not. They're not working out the way that they should be. I want to see Epic focus on the good features and offer things that Valve isn't doing, because I want those solutions there.
Right.
GOG and Steam exist in this wonderful place where they offer different things, and each one kind of lives in their own kind of harmony. And I love that, and I like that that kind of concept exists. But every time a company comes out with a new digital storefront, and Epic is late to the game on that front, it feels like they're doing something that isn't adding more. And I hate that. I want them to be better for us as consumers, and it just doesn't seem like they're doing that for us, and it seems like they're working against our own interests, which is something I'm not a big fan of.
But what do you guys think? Do you kind of see what Epic Games is doing with Borderlands and some of these other bigger games, and do you hate what they're doing? Do you think that the Epic Games Store is offering you the playground where you want to go and experience the media? What's going on?
Yeah, and if you actually want to play any of the older Epic games, you'll be able to play them on Steam, but not on the Epic Games Store for some reason.
Very weird.
How do you feel about that? Please let us know.